And hello good people of the internet, it is I, Tommy Kelly, and this is Adventures in Woo Woo, and this is the monthly Q&A session for December 2020, where patrons give me some questions and I try my best to answer them. Well, in fairness, patrons have been very quiet the last couple of months, so it's mostly people on Discord who give me questions, though there is some from Patreon, which we'll get to in a bit. They're a bit full on, the Patreon ones, so we'll get into some easier ones on Discord. So, straight into it, no mess about it. This is the Osmo 2, with a Pocket 2, the DJI Pocket 2, with the standard lens, and yeah, that's just for people who are interested in such things. So, Jason asks, have you ever involved magic with the creation of music, either through some magical working, or thematically, artistically within it? I have. I have one song in particular that is very magic-y. It's called Circle, and I will put it up on Patreon or a link to it in some way. I was going to say I might put it up on the show notes, but given that I'm not sure I want it on the general release, I'll put it on Patreon. It'll be a better place. If you want to see it, that's where it'll be. I want to hear it, that's where it'll be. And the whole idea of the song was to call in a magic circle and to make, have it as a ritualistic thing. And the chorus is like north, south, east and west, I call you in. And then the whole chorus is actually the witch's chant, Isis, Astarte, Diana, Hecate, Demeter, Kali, and na. So that's very, very much on the nose with, doing a magic song. But I mean, all things creative, I would say, having a magic component to them. Maybe not when I was doing music so much was it explicit, but it's definitely that kind of, all the things that I talked about before, about the kind of semi-channeling aspect that is art, applies to music too. But yeah, it was something that if I was to record something now, that which it's likely I will do, that it would have a more, deliberate magic element to it, possibly. Sometimes you're just to try and, make a good song, rather than trying to, it's like sometimes it's all right just to write a story rather than it being a hyper sigil or a magic work, and just do something. But yeah, watch this space, as they say. Coco van Kleist. What musical artist has inspired you the most, or more specifically, which album? There's a number of people that would fall into that category equally, so I can't really say there's one in particular. The kind of big ones when I was playing guitar and when I was younger, teenager-y, and still to this day, I was literally listening to one of them an hour ago. Nuno Bettencourt from Extreme, huge influence on me and on guitar playing, and the only reason I really wanted to learn to play guitar was because of Nuno. And then after Nuno was Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction, who played with Chili Peppers, played with Panic Channel, has done numerous kind of MTV and tattoo shows and stuff like that. So yeah, he did that recent gig for Alice in Chains, the one that's been all over YouTube, where what's the word? The celebratory gig, or the some sort of award show, something. And Erwin did an Alice in Chains song. And he's really good in it. He does it with Chris Cheney from Jane's Addiction, and from originally Alanis Morissette, as far as I know. Which is interesting, because the original guitar player or bass player with Jane's Addiction, I think, ended up playing with Alanis Morissette. And Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters and Alanis Morissette. And then Corey from Slipknot. So it's very good. Check that out. The Metallica one's really good, particularly for Kirk Hammett's hat. Kirk Hammett's also an influence, I suppose. I'm big into him. But the big people would be Nuno Bettencourt, Dave Navarro, George Harrison, the Beatles, Abbey Road's the best Beatles album, Second Side of Abbey Road's finest piece of music ever written, Second Side of Ritual, The Low Habitual, it's very close to it. But I could go on forever on whose influences. Depeche Mode. I was big into Nine Inch Nails at one stage, Vast, Visual Audio Sensory Theatre, John Crosby, loads of things, like literally. But if I had to give the big three, it's Nuno Bettencourt, Dave Navarro, George Harrison. Labifacto. Can a person be motivated by desires that are not ultimately selfish? I doubt it. I don't think so. I can't think of an unselfish act unless you do it by mistake. And even an unselfish act that, you kind of assume that have an unselfish act would involve you not getting something from it. But even if it was to your detriment, there could still be an area of pride or ego to that as well, that it's kind of boosting your ego. Look how much of a victim I am, or look how much I've sacrificed. That's a very cynical answer. Possibly you could be motivated by desires that are, I suppose, unconscious in nature, that are probably, a collective unconscious in nature, or possibly a divine kind of walking through you or something like that, if you want to go that woo kind of route or whatever. I don't know. I mean, it's an unanswerable question, really. Not an unanswerable question, but it's a question that's asked a lot. I mean, even in an episode of Friends, and Phoebe's kind of way out of it doesn't work at all. It's completely wrong. She does get a benefit out of it because she gets happy that she helped her friend Joey. So I don't know. What do you think? What's your answer? Jason again. If you could instantly learn another language, what would you want to know? Italian. I've tried so many times to learn Italian because my whole plan is to retire to northern Italy and live in a mountain. That's the plan. I know a bit of Italian, but not great. I'd also like to learn, more Irish, Gaeilge, and possibly German, because I know a fair bit of German. I did German at school, but not to any great. I didn't pay much attention, to be honest. The rabbit's I suppose, or Enochian. Enochian would be a good one to be, able to, or Latin, if you're, from the magic thing. But no, I'm going to go with Italian as the actual answer to that question. The rabbit's magician. If you have a non-dual worldview where all things are one, like monism or idealism, how would that affect the morality of performing magic on another person? Well, see, even if it is a case that everyone is ultimately on some level one, the kind of breakdown or separation of that means that from the perspective of the single point of focus, it doesn't see himself as the one, and that's what you're infringing on. Like, you're never infringing on the ultimate God or the God above gods, or Eon or whatever that is the ultimate expression of the one or the non-dual or whatever it is, that we don't actually have words for these things. So you can't, in a sense, can you sin against God? Well, if you're Catholic or a Christian, you certainly can, but in my view, possibly not. But you still, that doesn't give you license to do whatever you want, because I mean, you could say performing magic, well, I'm trying to heal these people, that's, and you go, that's good, and that could be seen as good, but you don't know what's their highest purpose. They might want out of here, they might want to leave, they might want to be healed, they might, be all for ending their suffering. And then, is infringing on them to heal them any worse than infringing on them to harm them? So, again, it's like the question above about the non-selfish act. I don't know. From my perspective, I wouldn't do magic on other people unless they ask me, and even if they ask me, I tend not to do it. So you have to make your own decision about that, and you have to look your own God in the eye, or your own people. I would suggest, if you were afraid to ask someone, can I do magic on you, because you're afraid of their reaction, then you probably shouldn't do magic for them. And if you are have the ability to ask them, can I do magic for you, knowing that they will probably be okay with it, then they're okay with it. So that, that's kind of what I would suggest in that. Robot 5000. Do you have a regular creativity practice of some kind, or do you just kind of come to it when you come to it? I have a kind of a thing that I do, that if I'm building up to a project of something new and I can feel that kind of momentum or that kind of want or need of vocation or the drive or whatever it is, that at the beginning of it I'll spend some time on technique. So if it's writing, I'll learn some story structure stuff, or listen to some, lectures about, writing in general, I don't mean spelling or grammar, that, but like, creativity, approach to creative writing, that kind of stuff. Or I'll do some life drawing, or I'll learn some new techniques in the programs I'm using, or that kind of thing, to get me into the kind of situation where I'm more able to deliver the idea that's hopefully going to come through me. You have a better technical ability to realize whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so if you do that at the beginning of each project, then hopefully then by the end of it or each project, you've stepped up a level. You've gained a level because you have worked on your technique as well, and you're in a position to realize, I suppose, better ideas, or be more creatively better technically, and so that your ideas or manifest it in a higher kind of version of it. That's the kind of idea. But yes, I have, and I do have an ability to draw when I'm not in the mood, because it's from doing things for work and for, different projects and different things I've been on. You just kind of have to, you can't just wait around for the mood to be in. So I can do that. I can kind of build through it to a point. There is some days, and they're very rare, but they do happen, where I literally can't draw, and it's nothing to do with my mood, or it's nothing to do with the workload, right? Like, it's just a physically, I try to draw a face and I just can't draw. There's some sort of disconnect or something like that. It happened recently, actually, but it happens, I'd say, about maybe once a year, once every 2 years, something like that. But just a day where you just have to give up because you literally can't do anything for whatever reason. But that you just kind of come to it. I try as much to just allow it to come in its own way too, and not force it. But at the same time, I do kind of put schedules on it and time frames and stuff like that, and absolutely break them. But there is something in having a bit of a schedule or a goal or something that does kind of help the momentum along. Once you're not kind of rushing or forcing it. In an ideal world, I mean, if you're doing work for other people or you're part of a project or a team or something, then that's, you have to adhere to whatever rules or kind of guidelines that you have decided at the outset of that. If you're working just for your own stuff or for your own kind of creativity, then you're probably better to put some sort of schedule on it, because it's never going to be perfect and you're never going to be happy with it in the way that you want to be happy with it. So it's just, at some point you have to just call it done too and get it out there. So yeah, hope that answers your question. Baraxis, how's the family? The family is good. The wee man is all business. He's all talk. He's loads of words. He loves YouTube. He loves Paw Patrol. He loves CKN toys. He loves Blippi. Very happy little man, and legend. We cool wee guy. He's kind of hanging around because we have the preschool in the house. He officially doesn't go to preschool till next year, but he wanders in every now and again and gets on as well as any of them in it. He's well able for other people, and he's very sociable and very, seems to make friends easily, which is great. That'll stand him. So yeah, all is good. My wife's back's a bit sore. She was at a massage today, and she has to do a series of courses of massages because her back is so bad. She does an awful lot of exercise and yoga and running and all that kind of stuff. So you would assume that it's an injury rather than possibly wear and tear, because she'd be well stretched, but who knows. Jason P, did fatherhood have an effect on your thoughts regarding magic? My son is now 2 months old and has become my motivation for self-improvement shadow work. Yeah, so I mean, definitely would have been a motivating factor towards doing more shadow work, and not do the things that people may have done to you growing up. Not be that kind of, don't make the same mistakes that happened to you. Like, of course, you're going to make different mistakes, and you're going to mess up your kid in a different way, hopefully, than your parents did to you. But to be more mindful about it, and that kind of, and it's kind of a dilemma in one sense, because there's a part of you that also has to recognize that your parents thought they were doing the right thing. I assume like that most people's parents were abusive or deliberately abusive or whatever, and so you thinking you're doing the right thing is also probably not going to be the right thing ultimately. So it's hard to you just kind of have to make yourself. I have to make myself feel just a bit more open to rather than having a firm idea of what I want or how I'm going to raise my kid or something like that. Just more kind of go with the flow and go with him, see what he's about, rather than deliberately trying to correct the errors of what I felt happened to me growing up. And it's like it's his life, and I have to be cognizant of that rather than trying to give him the childhood I wanted, which might necessarily be the childhood he wants. And I think that could be an easy trap to fall into. He might like some of the stuff that, he might like be forced to go do sports or something like that, which I wasn't particularly into. He might need that or want that, or need that extra kind of coaching or whatever it is that, that's just an example. I don't know. But my actual approach on magic, it made me, I suppose, more appreciative of the actual physical world. Whereas before then, I probably was a bit new agey, a bit flighty. The world is an illusion. None of this is real. It doesn't really matter. This is all Maya. Whereas when you have a kid, it kind of grounds you a bit more in the world, in the actual physical thing, and there's going to be all going, as well as possible. There'll be someone here that's part of you that when you're dead, and the world will go on, and you realise that the world will go on in a very real way without you. More than, because you kind of, if before I had kids, it was kind of this thing of that when you die, and that's it, the world doesn't really matter. But now when I die, the world still does matter, because there's a huge part of my heart that's still going to be involved in the world. So, there's that kind of element of a change of perspective towards feeling a need, not necessarily to want to save the world or change the world, but just to be aware that, illusion or not, that it's very important and it's the reality we have, and that in order to be able to traverse through the world, or to help someone like your child traverse through the world, having a kind of an opinion of it's all illusion, it's all Maya, or whatever. Not that I was fully that way, but it was definitely in the back of my mind. It's probably not that helpful in, to be closer, I suppose, to the father figure in the 40 Servants. That kind of figure of authority who's been through the rough, who's been through the trials and tribulations, who understands them, and who's, while not going to protect you from them or stop you from having them in the way the mother possibly would, that allow you to make the mistakes so that you learn, because he knows they're unavoidable and they're parts of life, and in trying to avoid them, that you can cause more suffering and misery. I really can't talk today, my apologies. Then need it. So holding the hand of the child as they have the rites of passages or the trials and tribulations, rather than trying to make sure they don't happen to them or something. But ultimately it didn't change how I approach sigils or whatever it is, but I doubt that's the question you're asking anyway. Abraxas, since Cyberpunk is about to release, are you going to stop Adventures in Woo Woo? Well, it came out last night, and it took about half an hour for it to update enough that I could play it, so I had stayed up, but I only got about an hour of it last night, and an hour or so this morning. It's really good. I'm enjoying it. I like it. I can't imagine it's going to take over my world, and I'm going to get lost in it in quite the way people are expecting, but see, it's a good game so far. Very early days of it. Morgan, here's one that I'm currently thinking a lot about. Any recommendations on how to use magic to perceive the truth of a situation? Are there any particular types of magic that are better suited for identifying what is really going on in a situation? Well, my first answer, as I said on the Discord, was divination, which just seems like absolutely geared towards that kind of a thing. But being that I know that you're aware of divination, I doubt that was the answer that you were looking for. So what I would suggest to you in that is the Alan Chapman Margia teaching around bindings, which is exactly that, is about trying to find the truth of a situation, or trying to find the truth of the role you're playing in a situation, or to find how you're in some way being tricked by an evil genius, Kakodaimenos. But you can also do it like not just on, say, your life or in a dream or some sort of experience you have. You can do it cosmologically, on anything, or you could do it on a cultural one as well. Technically speaking, you're only meant to do them when they arrive during a House of God practice, which is the fire practice from Magia. And that's when you're doing the fire practice, if something comes to mind, and there is an element of inviting it to come to mind so that you can deal with it. So if something comes to mind that breaks the practice, that means you get totally lost in it for a while, then that's the thing that you bring then to the binding practice, which is a kind of you're looking just to see, describing it. There's 5 aspects, and then you see the reciprocal nature of all people involved, and that very much has helped me see the truth in situations that I couldn't see. Then one very interesting one recently I was doing, it was about a sort of part. I have a sense of sadness and loss that I'm trying to find out exactly what it is. But one huge element of it was around not grieving for a pet that I had, for a cat that died a couple of years ago. And when I was describing the whole thing, because I didn't know I was still grieving for a cat, or not that I was still grieving, that I hadn't at any point ever grieved for the cat, because I just couldn't deal with it. And the trauma of, bringing to the vet, and, them being put to sleep and all of that kind of stuff, where I immediately just clammed up and it says I'm not dealing with that. In the sense, one thing of that it's a cat. You shouldn't have these feelings for a cat, even though it was my oldest acquaintance in the world. Like, I know 14, 15 years, through a couple of relationships, through a number of different jobs, different houses, different locations. The most consistent thing in my life, other than my wife, and would have predated my wife. So even with that, you can't have these feelings towards a cat because it's just an animal. So never allowed myself to actually grieve. And so when I was writing out all the thing, just describing this kind of feeling of loss, this kind of feeling of sadness, and mourning, and because it feels like mourning, and it feels like I've lost, I don't know, like all of these things. Anyway, but when it finally, you're just sitting and you're looking at it and trying to let it unfold or whatever, and it just kind of hits you, and it's like, that's insane that it's there and I couldn't realize it. Didn't put it together, and it just kind of falls. Your whole thing just kind of falls apart, your pretense, whatever. And looking at the sheet when you write it out, I mean, it's blatantly obvious what it's about, but it wasn't until the point that I realized what it was about. But I mean, every single thing that I'd written down, it's obvious that it was about my cat dying, and not kind of, you could make a case. It's literally me talking about my cat dying, and I didn't know I was talking about my cat dying. So that kind of stuff I find very interesting, that about the truth of a situation. So that's something to look into, and you can do that, not, as I say, not just about yourself or stuff that's happening to you, as a shadow working type thing, but you can do it kind of culturally or cosmologically as well. So that'd be one I would recommend you check out. Electro Wizard, how have you been? I've been okay. I went through a very tough time there for a while. I was dealing with some like the stuff I was talking about to Morgan, about dealing with this sense of sadness that I've kind of felt an awful lot in my life. Not an awful lot, my entire life. And trying to work out what it is, and just uncovering different kind of bits of it. But when you start looking at it, it intensifies. Like, you're not meant to intensify it. You're meant to just look at it. But so it's probably, by saying it intensifies is probably not right. What I mean is, you become more aware of it, and you're not hiding from it, and you're looking at it, and that can be really, really tough. And so I kind of got into that, and I've kind of got into myself a bit, whatever. Part of the process was, I knew what I was doing, getting into it, but when you're in the middle of it, it's hard, because it becomes very much all encompassing, and colours your entire kind of outlook, and your life in a sense becomes about the shadow that you're trying to uncover, because it's the nature of it is it doesn't want to be seen, it doesn't want to let go, it doesn't want to let you remove it, because it wants to continue going or whatever, and so it fights. But it was a huge part of it, like the sadness thing. Of course, it's not the ultimate thing, I don't think. Although it might be, because there is a sense in the Magia thing that stuff from the future can affect you, because time doesn't exist, and so that retroactively, like, you'd be sad about something that hasn't happened yet, or anyway, without getting too woo into that. So something that like, say, that my cat dying could have had an effect on my sadness throughout my entire life. Not sure I buy that. I trust in that, because all of the other stuff that is purported around the binding stuff is absolutely true, even though it doesn't seem so. It didn't seem to me at all to be the case when I first got into it, and every time it is the case. It's like, without fail, it is the case. So the bit that I don't understand about it, like, say, from the future stuff, that just seems a bit to me, I trust that it's true, because everything else has been true. Maybe foolishly, but that's the thing. So uncovering that bit about the cat, and then being able to recognize when that arrives, and seeing that that's kind of not separate, but while it's still part of it, it's not the entire thing. But I've been able to recognize what that is, and so while it still can sometimes be, sad when you think about whatever, your cat dying, whatever, but you go, oh, at least I know what it is now. Like, it's not just this immense sadness that I've no idea what it is, where it came from, or that immediately I try to get rid of, or I can't cope with, or just because you get confused. Is this, do I just feel this towards life? Is it about, what is it? And it was affecting in a way, kind of an interesting thing that was happening with my son, that it was colouring a way of how I was interacting with him, in that I had the sense of that happy things had this tinge of sadness to them because there was this element of mourning that was going on through it, that it was almost at times that I would be watching a happy thing, that looking at my son, something happy he was doing or something wonderful, as if, you know, in a film when someone's kids have died or their wife has died and they're watching the home movie getting drunk, you know, you're Mel Gibson in Elite Weapon, whatever, and you're rewinding the same scene as your kid blows out the candle, something like that. There's this kind of element of seeing all of this through a lens of looking back at a happy time from a sad place, and that went by doing that binding. And now my interaction with my son when he does the happy thing or the play thing, I'm there, and it's not as if I'm looking at it from a mourning or sad place, almost as if looking back from 10 years in the future when he died or something horrible like that. It's very hard to explain, and no matter what you try to explain about it, it's not exactly what I'm saying. But so yeah, to answer your question, how have you been? It's been up and down, but I'm on the better side of it now. Of course, then you go into the next stage and you uncover the next thing, and who knows what's up ahead. But yeah, I know what I chose to do this. Morgan just getting, talking again about the divination question. Not the divination, the truth question. IDCT321. Hi Tommy. Just to get to know you more, what's your favourite fruit and veg? And do you have any fun vices like eating too much or buying too many books or something along those lines? Well, I do. My favourite fruit and veg, I'm not a particular fan of fruit in that I don't mind fruit. It's just that when you've basically spent your entire life on a diet, and particularly when you do the fasting stuff that I do, when you have very low calories, 100 calories on a pear just isn't worth it at all. So you just tend to avoid fruit. A pear probably is my favourite fruit. I like most fruit. I like bananas, but don't do anything with it. Don't put it in a cake. Don't put it in a sandwich. Don't do anything with it, because that's just wrong. Veg, I like most veg. I go through periods of eating lots of veg and periods of not eating any veg or whatever. Some cheese and eggs I eat a lot of, even though I was vegan for a couple of years too. I did miss them. Do I eat too much? Obviously, because I'm overweight. I do, but I don't eat. I don't feel I'm a glutton in that I don't eat more than I want most of the time. Obviously, everyone indulges every now and again, but and in fact, I would say I eat less than I want to eat, more or less all the time. In that, if I did eat to the indulgence or the satisfaction or the satiety or whatever, I'd probably be a lot bigger than I am, weight-wise. But I spend half my year, definitely at least half my year, on some sort of fasting diet thing, and obviously it's not particularly working well for me because I either spring back or most of the diets just didn't work for me. The low carb keto thing that I did was good, definitely lost weight quick, but it's not, you can't do 800 calories of no carbs indefinitely. Well, I can't. And so then as soon as I came off it just, any kind of weight loss I had just went back. It's an ongoing problem. Something that I've done a few bindings around to find the issue, and things I have to uncover. But it's all these kind of self-worth things where it kind of diminishes, I suppose, in a sense, what I have achieved, because it doesn't matter. It negates it by saying it doesn't matter. You recorded an album, doesn't matter you're fat, or you've done all these gigs, doesn't matter you're fat, written book, doesn't matter you're fat. That kind of thing, it negates it in that there's only some kind of worth. You're only worth a person to being a person if you're achieved something while being thin and good looking, which is so fucking stupid. But it's a representation of the spirit of the times, I would certainly suggest. So that's everyone on Discord. So we go to Abraxas on Patreon. What are we at? Nearly half an hour. Oh my god. Sorry for the length of this. Abraxas, are you hesitant to go full woo spirit model? I am. And the reason why I'm hesitant to... I have times when I absolutely engage full woo spirit model, but from a chaos magic paradigm, in the sense of, belief shifting and acting as if it's true and all that. The reason why I don't go full woo is I've no evidence to go full woo, and I know there's a possibility that you have to believe it first before you get the thing. But it's just, there's nothing that's happened to me, and quite many things have happened to me, or many experiences I've had, but nothing that would convince me that anything is outside of my head. And I'm okay with it being inside my head. And the metaphorical truth aspect of it, or the belief shifting thing, if you're acting as if it's true, can get you the effect, and that's fine. And also, I don't want to then, I suppose, publicly say spirit model stuff thing, being that I'm not convinced of it or I've no evidence of it or whatever, because I don't want to add that thing I've talked about before. I don't want to add to the bullshit. I don't want to, start going, talk to the angels when I don't know. Like, I can't talk to the angels, or I can, but they don't talk back to me. It's like the Sepherion stuff where I spent whatever it was 2 years trying to get his attention, going full Gordon White and the entire thing, and he just you can either go he didn't give a shit, or there's nothing there to give a shit. There isn't. Particularly with him, he's interesting because he's by all accounts an amalgamation of a number of other people. Not a real, but define real, this thing. So I am hesitant for the fact that even though people who I absolutely have trust and faith in know more than me, and they would have a spirit model basis to their kind of views, I'm not in a position to trust in that from my own experience, and I don't feel confident in having assertions or claiming stuff that I'm not fully sure of. And in fact, with the I could swayed, most days could be swayed either way. So I don't know, unless literally an angel or a master of wisdom or Lucifer himself came in the door and sat down and probably sat in front of me and said, look, I'm real. I probably won't believe it's real. Even the experience with the HGA, which is the HGA knowledge conversation, the Holy Guardian Angel, Holy Guardian Angel, what a Freudian slip, is it's true. It's hits all the things that everyone else who's claimed it has. So it is the experience that other people have, and even that hasn't convinced me it's anything more than me. Which from a non-dual point of view, it is nothing more than me too. So I don't know. I'm not answering your question probably or effectively, I would say, Abraxas. Merrily Duffy. Any childhood experiences that were woo related that you'd like to share? Imaginary friends? No, I never had an imaginary friend. I had this guy, E.T., Teddy, who I have my entire life, who's in some way bound up with my HGA, which is an interesting thing, and my cat. That's an interesting thing. In Blood of the Saints, Duncan Balfour talks about a window at the door, or window glass beside his front door, and it had a yellow tinge to it, and in some way he knew that it recognised some sort of divinity in it, or some sort of connection, or some sort of spiritual thing that even years later looking back, he feels that it's had some sort of connection with his HGA. And when I read that, I totally understand that. No question, I understand it. And it's the same with that ET, that I have the exact same recognition of something, a being who only has my best interest at heart. And I mean, even if it's just a representation of it, the Teddy you had when you were a child, so it is the thing that only had your best interest at heart in many ways. Even if it's just pointing at something rather than being an actual connection, in the sense of a physical attribute of the HGA, it's still pointing to the same thing. Past life visions, no. Ghosts, yeah, I had a few ghost things over the years. Heard banshees, I'm pretty sure, which are the Irish things of Irish ghosts that scream or cry when someone's going to die. I seen a ghost or an apparition or something in a music venue one time. It walked right past me. It was huge. And then I seen it later in a photograph of a book. But it's one of those things that I've had, same with the star exploding thing that I've talked about before, that even now looking back at it, I don't really believe it, even though I know at the time it happened. It's that normalization thing that has happened. The big thing that happened when I was a child, though, was this kind of, when I would talk about these things, particularly with my sister, talk about like ghosty things or spiritual things, whatever, the whole room would change, the atmosphere in the room would change, and it would be the sense of things kind of being lowered, or as if the pressure had changed in the room, and then the sense of being someone of a presence or whatever, or being looked at or something like that. Quite creepy. And my sister also was aware of it. We acknowledged it when it happened, because it could happen like that. And we used to call it that place. I'm in that place now, or whatever. And I've had that a couple of times, only a couple of times in my adult life. Most recently, I've had it in mushrooms, which was really not nice, last year. And I really didn't like it. I felt there was a huge disassociation to it. But it was an interesting thing that aware of a presence. I remember as well, a couple of years ago, I was doing some kind of evoking stuff, and every night at 3 o'clock I felt there was a presence in my bedroom, and just, like for about 2 weeks, woke up, or in and around, not on the dot 3 o'clock, but in and around them. I would always, like 3:03, 3:11, something like that. And the feeling that I was being watched, I was being looked at, that there was something there. But again, went nowhere. I know, I tried to, in a sense, communicate it, but there is this sense of fear or and almost a paralysis or something to it. It's like that idea, when you wake up from a nightmare and you still have that kind of, I suppose, adrenaline rush going through you, but it's not, my heart isn't beating with it. It's just that sense of fear or dread or presence, or as if you're in a place you shouldn't be, or something like that. I can't really describe it. It's hard. So that's the kind of the big one from my childhood that I can remember right now. Okay, this is coming up to nearly 40 minutes, so I think that's way more than enough for anyone to be listening to me blab on a bit. I hope that was in some way insightful or helpful for people, and obviously I assume that my experiences aren't that unique, so that something I have experienced or walked through might be a help for someone else. That's always the goal. So until next month, when we do another one of these, we also do the 1 card 47 readings as well, over on Patreon once a month. Be well, and have a great week, and may your best days be ahead. Be well.